You think with road mics are Australian based, you think that the Australians would have had that sussed, but we've definitely had some occasions where the audio hasn't been too clever. But I just like to just welcome you onto the podcast, Brandon. Thanks for spending, and obviously Paul as well. Thanks for spending your evenings to come with us. And I put something up on my LinkedIn a couple of days ago to say you was coming on, and I had a text message come through from a client to say it's a bit of a scout to get you on. So that's a very positive re-endorsement I can kind of give for you there. So welcome. As we briefly just touched upon there might be those in the UK. Quite a lot of our listenership is in the UK, and they might not be familiar with who you are and what you're involved in. So it'd be great if you could just give a 30-second kind of rundown of who you are, what you're involved in. Sounds like you're involved in quite a lot of stuff, so I'm not sure if you could do it in 30 seconds, but it'd be great just to give you the rundown of who you are and what's brought you to Design Truth.
Sure. So I'm my background is an industrial designer. I graduated 30 odd years ago, and started off actually studying mechanical engineering. Didn't quite like that, and switched over to industrial design, and sort of have never looked back. I also did a PhD in environmental design. It's an area I'm super passionate about as well. And have been running the Good Design Awards here in Australia really for the last 25 years. So that's sort of given me, I guess, a broad outlook on what's going on here in Australia, but also globally as well, through the World Design Organization being part of that entity, which originally was set up as the International Council of Societies of Industrial Design, which is the sort of global body for industrial design based in Montreal. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. 30 seconds.
Yeah, good stuff. You did a lot better than some, so well done on that. But there's a lot to go through over the next hour, particularly with some of the different kind of areas you're involved in. But I think it might be best to start with non-design stuff, because I was doing a little bit of research today, and I catch up with Paul quite regularly about Australia, and we often talk about that. The time where I came over, Paul, when it was a bit of a drinking tour around the coast, and some kind of good memories there. But I was reading that it's actually on the BBC today, and it was something along the lines of the only thing Australian millennials want at the minute is a vaccine, and that was the kind of the headline. Briefly give us a rundown of what life is like in Australia at the minute, because I believe you've just, or Melbourne in particular, has just gone into another lockdown, although it's really about 5 cases or something. But it must be a frustrating kind of process that you're all involved in at the minute.
Look, it is, and I mean, I'm in Sydney, and life is pretty much back to normal here. We, I think we're incredibly blessed to have come out of this thing in the way that we have. We're talking about a handful of cases here and there that sort of pop up, and the one thing I think that Australians are pretty good at is just following orders, believe it or not. When we're told to isolate, we isolate. When we're told to wear masks, we wear a mask. And we last year was pretty tough on everybody, but I think we've managed to come out of it pretty well. And whether that's through design, or whether that's through an effective government, or whether that's just pure luck, I'm still not quite sure. But I think if there's one place in the world I want to be right now, it's right here. And we seem to be navigating it quite well. That's notwithstanding the fact that, as you would have said, seen today in the news, Melbourne's gone into another lockdown. But that's just the way we've managed to navigate our way through this pandemic. I think because of the way Australia is situated, we have our various states, and we have various state governments that are in control of those states, so we can quickly kind of go, right, there's a hot spot here. Let's instigate a lockdown. Let's manage it, bring things back to normal before things get completely out of control. And as I said before, I think people are pretty diligent where it comes to going, look, we're all in this together. We've got to just batten the hatches and get through it. I'm pretty optimistic that Melbourne won't go into too much of a longer lockdown, but I can't predict the future. They're the one state that just seems to cop it. They've all through last year as well. They went through a pretty heavy period of lockdown. But you walk down the street in Sydney CBD. It's as if nothing's happened. It's generally back to normal, and the CBD is buzzing. I read today that our economy is 3% up from where it was, pre-COVID. So we're one of the few countries in the developed world that's actually done better, which I think is just phenomenal. But that's, again, there's a lot of businesses that are going to get slammed. A lot of businesses in the hospitality sector, restaurants, catering, the event sector as well. But like I said, compared to the rest of the world, I'm pretty fortunate that we are where we are here, really.
Yeah, Paul, and you're back sailing again, are you, Paul?
We're back sailing. You're allowed to have at least more than 2 crew on a boat at any time, so that's good. It's hard to social distance when there's 8 people on a boat and it's only 40 foot long. So it's going back to normal. But Brandon, from your point of view, as you're saying, Australia's, and I agree with you, very compliant. We're told to do things and we get on with it. The culture of sort of working from home or a hybrid of the two seems to have been adopted really well. And we're now starting to get individuals that, when we're talking to them about job opportunities, they're looking at the sort of the balance now of, well, am I going to be in the office all the time? Am I going to be at home, or is it going to be a hybrid of the two? What's your sort of take on companies and consultancies, how they're coping with that sort of working from home? Because I know that it doesn't really fit comfortably with all disciplines and all industries, but what's your sort of take on it from a wider view of this sort of working from home culture now we're all living in?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, Paul. I think that we're going to see a lot of companies that, obviously, there's certain businesses that require you to physically be there to perform a role or a function, but a lot of the service-based industries just don't require you to do your 9 to 5 office job anymore. And so I think we're just at the start of seeing how this is all going to pan out. From what I'm seeing, and particularly the design businesses, the design consultancies, the industrial designers, we've got technology now that was always probably there, but it wasn't leveraged to the extent that it has been. Here we are having a conversation through Zoom. I guess I bet you $1 million pre-COVID, we never would have actually have utilized a piece of technology like this to connect and have a conversation. And here we are doing it. It's just very overnight. It's become the norm. I sit on a board of a tech company here in Australia called Space Talk, and we've actually, all through COVID, we designed and developed another range of a product with a company in the UK called Tangerine. You probably know really, really well. Yeah. And it was all done through my office downstairs in our house. Everybody came together through Zoom once a week, and we went through the design process, and we ended up designing this fantastic product. And it didn't really matter whether there were a group of people in an office or a group of people sitting in their own houses, leveraging this technology. So again, it's as I said, it's early days, but a lot of the people I've spoken to, they've almost ran surveys with their team saying, what's sort of an ideal outcome for you? Do you want to go back to the normal office kind of environment? Do you want to work from home, or is it a hybrid? And I think the hybrid's probably going to be something that, we still need that face-to-face interaction, that social interaction. We still need to bump into people. We still need to meet with clients face-to-face. So I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think it's just going to be a really careful mix of the two.
Yeah. So with that hybrid then, a big part of that is going to be employing those that can live and work in Australia and not necessarily, whereas you think about digital design, where it's such a global kind of viewpoint, you can literally have someone that's on the Cayman Islands or by the beach and someone else in London, and they can kind of work in partnership with one another. But with Australia, they're still going to have to be, if they're from the UK or Europe, they're going to have to get on a plane to come over there. But the borders are shut at the minute, Paul. How's that been for you over the last... We talk about this quite often, and you might be able to give a rundown of what that's been like, and frustrations and observations.
Sure, yeah, it's been challenging, and a lot of clients are very interested in returning Australians who are looking for work. And we've had some success, and we've secured some people. So what they've done is they've employed them. They're working as part of a team. As Brandon says, Skype, Zoom, all these tools they can use. But they're working remotely, and they're the most furthest remote person of the team. And they're based in the UK. They're working full time for Australian companies. And now they're just waiting until they can get a flight. And that seems to be a problem, getting flights with the restrictions of how many flights into Australia. And it might be another 3 months, 4 months before these people get on a flight and actually come back to Australia and see the whites of their eyes of their colleagues and walk into the studio. But it seems to work. And as Brandon said, I think it's going to be a hybrid. I don't think they want to do it forever. But if they can see that they can secure the talent that helps them on a project and they're on their way back to Australia, I think that's a good halfway house. And so, yeah, it seems to be working well.
Yeah, and there's lots of companies advertising, isn't there, at the minute? I seem to see it pop on my LinkedIn all the time. It seems to be, you said the economy's up 3%. From a design standpoint, there's definitely a lot of activity, isn't there?
Look, I'm seeing that. I don't know if you are as well, but it seems, just through one medium, through LinkedIn, I'm constantly seeing posts of people, we're hiring, and it's a lot of consultancies across all the different disciplines, whether it be digital comms, service strategy, product designers, and that's a really positive sign. It means they're growing, it means they're doing business. So more of that.
Yeah, good stuff. And Paul, is that you must be? Yeah, you're in the front line of it. So
absolutely. I'm talking to clients now, almost on a daily basis. And before it was, pretty much we're interested in these people. If you see talent coming through, please share them with us. Now it's almost on a daily report. Have you found anybody? Here's a name. Can we network? So yeah, the activity levels certainly picking up, which is great. I think Australia's got a real appetite for innovation, and there's some really exciting startups. And I was talking to a client in San Francisco this morning, and they were saying that from where they are, they can see that Australia has got this pool of talent of people that are in very innovative startup organizations. They just see that Australia seems to have this really good startup mentality, which I thought was great. And this was a company in San Francisco saying, look, we'd like to employ people remotely. Can you have a look around? So as Brandon said, I think there's a really good vibe in Australia at the moment. And I think that's just sending ripples out around the globe, really.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see with that kind of lockdown strategy of kind of locking down early and there's no cases domestically, which is fantastic, is that when you're looking at hiring and the time pressures, I mean, even on a global market, but it does take quite a long time to hire, doesn't it? It's not a quick fix. But if you're only kind of allowed to recruit domestically, and there's a lot of time pressures that are coming with hiring, you've won a boatload of work and you need to deliver on that work, or someone's left and you've got to hit a deadline or whatever. If it's going to take probably a lot longer because you're now fishing in a much smaller pond, you wonder if, like, short, medium, and even more medium to long term, how viable that is. Because there are going to come a point where it's like we need those borders to open up. Otherwise, it's all well and good saying we've got 50 jobs here, but if you can't find the 50 people to do it, it's a redundant job, isn't it, at the end of the day? And that's kind of this kind of balancing act that I suppose all countries are in now. It's where, okay, we can get the virus down, but we now need to think about the economy and also how can we balance the two. And I suppose that's kind of Australia, a great example of that, what they've done so well with kind of limiting the virus, but also it's how do we manage all the other things that come with that. And I suppose that's kind of where you guys are.
It's the long tail that they're talking about, and I think you're spot on, but I think that's going to be, that impact will wash across all the different countries as well. People in the UK wanting to hire people internationally as well. It's just, I think the way out of this is getting vaccinated and working towards a point where we can actually open up our borders again, and life hopefully goes back to some form of normality.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. Well, as I say, that's the non-design stuff out the way. So, if you're interested in going to Australia at the minute, it's far more normal than maybe what it is over here, but we are doing an incredible job with the vaccines at the minute. So I certainly can't complain. Brandon, you're one of the kind of driving forces behind Good Design Australia, which is kind of internationally recognised, isn't it, in terms of from an award standpoint? Is that something you've been involved in since the early days? Is that something you've been a part of as it's kind of progressed? Give us a bit of a rundown of Good Design Australia and what that kind of involves and entails.
Yeah, sure. So this year's 25 years for me, bashing away at that, and it doesn't feel like it. It sort of feels like it's kind of gone so quickly. So I was extremely lucky, I guess. I graduated from University of Newcastle with an industrial design degree, and I ended up getting a job at Standards Australia. Standards Australia is our sort of national standards body that develop industry standards, and they were at the time, so this is 1996, 1997, responsible for managing what was then called the Australian Design Awards. They actually inherited that from the federal government back in 1991. And prior to that, if you zoom all the way back down to 1958, it was actually, the body originally was set up as the Industrial Design Council of Australia. So we briefly spoke before the call, and there's just this rich history behind that organisation. It was actually set up based on the UK Design Council back in the early sort of 50s and 1940s, and that was, as you would know, set up really through Winston Churchill after the war as a way to sort of rebuild Great Britain at the time, and Australia being part of the Commonwealth, we sort of, what the UK did, we did. So we adopted this idea of establishing a design council. The Industrial Design Council later became the Australian Design Council, which then was the government sort of changed hands so many different times, and it got handed across to Standards. So I joined in 1996, fresh graduate out of university, not really sure what the hell I wanted to do with my life, and my industrial design degree tucked under my arm, and within the first couple of months, I just went, wow, there's just so much history here from a design standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint. You know, it was just this incredible amount of material that sort of, to me, sort of painted a picture about what this country is. The projects, the products that were designed and developed and manufactured, and I quickly became really passionate about it and thought, do I pursue a traditional industrial design degree and go and get a job in a consultancy somewhere, or do I sort of take this other road and try and look at creating a career out of promoting design and championing the value of design and being an advocate for design. So I stuck around, and one thing led to another, and 15 years later, and I was still there, and we made some pretty significant changes to the awards program. In 2008, which is really the 50-year anniversary of the awards, we opened it up internationally, so it became known as the Australian International Design Awards. That was a really big step for the design sector here in Australia, because what we were saying is that, to win and to really benchmark the design sector here, we can't sort of go on comparing Australian design with Australian design. We really need to sort of benchmark it against what's happening internationally. Sort of fast forward back to, I guess, 2010, this is roundabout when the GFC hit and Standards sort of said, right, we really need to look at, what our core business is. And design was always this oddball that really didn't fit within Standards. They were all about conformity and quality assurance and standards development. And then there was this design promotion bit that they kind of thought, well, do we either kind of get rid of it and figure out a way that we can, let it sort of live its own life. And that's when I worked with a lot of people within the design sector to establish Good Design Australia as a separate entity. So that was 2010. We essentially absorbed what was known as the Australian Design Awards, the Australian Design Council. Everything got sort of moved across. And that's been running ever since. So I think the great thing about that is that the organisation's been really agile. We've been able to sort of really expand the categories within the Good Design Awards, which is what are known as the Australian Good Design Awards, rather than it being based on product design and industrial design. We now have categories for architectural design, service design, design strategy, digital design, communication design, engineering design, through to fashion, social impact. So it's really, we've worked. I think the really beautiful thing is that the design community here in Australia is quite small, quite tight, and everyone's really, I guess, works together with that end goal in place to say, how do we actually create something really, really big and, I guess, respected internationally. That was always the one driving factor as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The main thing that keeps me busy is running the awards program. It's sort of grown now from being a national program to an international program with all these different categories, and making sure that we uphold the integrity of the program, the integrity of that evaluation process, which is always quite challenging.
Yeah. So 2021 Good Design, I take it the entries are closed for that. I think it was last week or the week before.
Yeah, we've just gone through our entry process, which has been really interesting.
Yeah. So what's the next stage for you? I'm intrigued. Is it, I take it you've got a judge, or there's a committee or panel or of those that do that? What's just for insight to those that perhaps look at awards and think, do I enter or whatever? What's the evaluation process now for you guys as a collective to say that is a winner and that's not going to win this year? What's this next period of time like for you guys?
So I'll explain the process pre-COVID.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, when the world was normal, it's something that I think having the body sort of sit within standards really gave us that rigor and made sure that we had to take that evaluation process super seriously. No disrespect to any of the other award programs out there in the world, and there are thousands of them. A lot of them are, I call it, pretty picture. I have a look at a pretty picture online and go, wow, that's great design. And as you know, you really have to pick up the product and you have to pull it apart. And particularly with product design, you've got to get in there and you've got to experience the product. You've got to turn it on. If it's a coffee machine, you've got to make coffee. And if it's an iron, you've got to actually iron clothes. So we've taken a great amount of pride in that being the mainstay of our awards program. So pre-COVID, we hire out essentially an aircraft hangar type warehouse. We have all these projects shipped in. A lot of the international stuff basically gets shipped in as well. And we spend an entire week with a jury of Australian and international judges. We fly in from different parts of the world across all those different disciplines and lock ourselves up in this big playground for design. It's good fun. And at the end of the week, we really decide which projects end up receiving the top accolades. The question around judging, Brad, is something that I find extremely fascinating. How do you judge good design? You know, and it was a large part of my PhD thesis as well. Is how do you actually create an evaluation system that looks at design and tries to establish what's good and what isn't. And so we put an enormous amount of work into designing the criteria that is applied to our awards program. And we've got an overarching criteria that really is quite simple in its design. It just asks the basic question, is this good design? And believe it or not, a lot of projects just fall by the wayside. They just don't even pass that first hurdle. And it's really interesting to see when you ask the judges just to ask that one question, is this good design? And what does that actually mean? Is it functional? Is it actually serving a purpose? Is it solving a problem? Has it been well designed in terms of its material, in terms of its manufacture? All those basic fundamental things that we call good design. And so a lot of projects just basically fail. And then we ask the second question, which is it innovative? How innovative is this project? If there are any world first features, have they done anything from a design perspective that's truly a game changer.
Mm.
And that's sort of almost the pointier end of the pyramid, if you like. And those are the projects that we sort of really start to interrogate, going, right, these guys have really done something here that's going to be a game changer. And then the third criteria is impact. And we look at impact as under three kind of sections, going commercial impact. Does this project, as a result of going through a professional design process, is it actually going to create money? Is it going to create a commercial return for the business? So that investment that's been made in design is actually going to create a return on that design investment. We look at societal impact. Is it actually going to make a difference to our quality of life? And then we look at environmental impact as well. So impact are the ones, I guess, at the very, very pointy end of the pyramid, and the ones that, I guess, end up receiving the top accolades. And then for each of the criteria, and for each of the categories, we have very specific criteria as well that we even drill deeper in. So it's a pretty complex process, and it's something, as I said, we take very, very seriously. It's we don't sort of skirt over it and go, oh, look, it's going to look nice in a design magazine. Yeah. We generally try and dig deep and find out what are these guys done that's worthy of award recognition.
Yeah, and how's that going to change post-COVID? Is there going to be a lot more packages arriving at the front door, or what's the?
So last year, obviously, like every other business around the world, we kind of like freaked out as soon as we heard the word pandemic. We went, well, we certainly can't fly in people from all over the world, and we certainly can't have this elaborate judging process. So we had to conduct everything online, and we leveraged technology like Zoom, and we brought all our judges together, and we luckily we had a back end website that had all the ability to judge online. This year we're going to go for a hybrid event where we're still going to utilize an online judging process, but we're actually going to break it up into two stages. So projects that then make it through to the second stage, we're going to get hold of them and, where possible, bring our judges together as well. Obviously, we can't fly international judges in here again until the borders open up. But again, just trying as hard as we possibly can to take the process really seriously and interrogate the projects that come through.
Yeah. Did you ever look at like augmented reality or something like that to as part of that judging process, or is that might be a very naive question, I don't know, but in terms of still interrogating, but strapping yourselves in online and
I haven't quite thought of that. That's an interesting concept. We'll have to. I can imagine all our judges walking around. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you and sponsored by our partners at Ineo Solutions. Ineo Solutions are a business transformation provider and platinum reseller of Keyshot and PTC. As part of our partnership, they are kindly providing a £100 voucher to those that sign up to our Design Truth Patreon. The relevant links will be in the description. Keep an eye out over the next couple of episodes for an announcement of Keyshot World. But for now, let's get back to the podcast. So you've kind of touched on it a bit. Is that for you the main benefit of the award then? Whereas I've heard some quite horror stories about awards over the last couple of months of where I don't need to name specific ones. I think everyone kind of knows which ones they are, but the evaluating process of it doesn't seem that intrusive, and it almost feels like if you pay to enter, you're probably gonna get the certificate at the end of it. But is that different with good design, where it's a case of, I'd imagine, do you have to pay to enter to the awards? Is there what's that kind of process like?
Yeah, and look, it's unfortunately there's a bit of a bad name out there for a lot of award programs that are extremely commercial. It's just how they operate, and a lot of them, it's again, no disrespect, they're a business. They've got to operate like any other business as well. We do charge a fee. It's a nominal registration fee, and if a project does go through and receives an award, we also offer them a winner's fee. And that's an option. They can choose not to take that up, and they can choose to take it up. And that's, I guess, just passing the costs on to that company. So if there's things such as trophies that need to be manufactured, and which I'd love to talk about because our trophies are quite special. We've put an enormous amount of work into actually designing and developing and manufacturing those from recycled waste, right through to developing press releases and all the, I guess, promotional activities that go with that. But Yeah, it's a tough one, because at the end of the day, we're organisations and businesses that need to operate and stay sustainable as well. I think the challenge for some of the bigger organisations, the bigger award programs, is that conundrum between, running it as a fully fledged business and actually, on the other hand, running it as a not-for-profit that's actually there to promote the value of design. And we get zero government funding. So we've really got to make sure that we maintain that careful balance between not being, exceptionally commercial, and being there as an industry body to promote the value of design as well. So it is tricky, I won't lie to you. But it's one thing that I take extremely seriously is the integrity of our award program, and that to me starts with the caliber of the judges that we attract, making sure that we are extremely transparent with our judging process, our criteria, and making sure that we communicate that as widely as possible. And that's, that to me is the best you can do.
The last time I was able to come and have a look at the show, I think it was a pre-judging show, and it was, I think, 2019 here in Sydney, up at the cricket ground. And I just got a feeling from the people that were there, who were in the competition, their work was being shown. There was a real pride in that they had got this far, regardless of whether they won. And it was a good feeling that they were all openly discussing their designs, and they were very passionate about what they'd done. And it was very prestigious that they were there. I just got to feel that there was a real buzz and a pride from some people that were small companies that had just been spotted and seen the design there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of prestige that goes with it, and I think there's a lot of pride with people that just say, look, I was in the competition in 2019, didn't win, but I was there, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. No, look, I totally agree, and I think that what I love about what you've just said is that I see that every year, because we've opened it up internationally now. You've got some really big companies, big brands, multinational brands that are entering. But then you've got these startups, and we spoke earlier on about, just the environment here in Australia is just so ripe for startups. There's a lot of startups with small businesses that are entering a product, and when they win, they quite proudly go out to the media, and we help them as part of our promotion, is to make sure that we talk about the impact of winning an award beyond just the design community. We try and get into mainstream media, try and get into the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald. We talk to the news stations, the TV stations. So it's that whole promotion activity. And you see these smaller businesses, as you said, Paul, that just see it as such a kickstart to their business, to their product, to try and get it onto the market. And that to me is something I just love to see. Because there's 3, 4, 5 years later, these small businesses, these startups turn into bigger businesses. They go all the way back, and they go, wow, we'll never forget that opportunity we had when we got up on stage and we received an award, and we got all this promotion and profile, and that was a really good kickstart to their business.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I've just grabbing it here, but I've still got copies of it here, and I go through it and I look at the companies that are in there, and I look at what they're doing now, and you're quite right, from small starts to bigger growth, but it's good, and like I say, a lot of prestige that goes with it.
To those that are listening on Spotify and Apple, that was some shameless product placement from Paul just saying. And to those that are watching on YouTube, it will make more sense. But yeah, to those that are listening, Paul just wangled the product right in front of our eyes. So yeah, I'm sure Brandon will give you $5 for that at the end of it. But with that kind of job that you do, Brandon, I'd imagine one of the massive benefits of it is that you're kind of fully integrated into design in Australia. And if you would have taken a more traditional route, i.e. just landed a job at an agency or whatnot, maybe you wouldn't have got this wide level of exposure. Is that something you would say to, I don't know, maybe graduates or even more experienced designers that are thinking about a bit of a career change or do something different, that actually you don't have to just go through the traditional route to still, have a successful career in design and still having that passion and still being involved in the industry. You don't have to be the one necessarily doing the nuts and bolts of the job to still be a part of that wider kind of community. Is it something you just fell into? I'm just quite intrigued because that's something that pops up, every now and again, is someone that's kind of doesn't necessarily want to do the hands-on stuff anymore, for example, wants to move away or thinks about where can I take this degree and can I do something else? But
look, it's a really good question. Yeah. I talk to university students a lot, and I go around to the various universities here and give lectures and stuff, and I tend to say the same thing, that I see that the design degree that I've got has taught me something that is so completely invaluable. I use it every single day in the way that I think, in the way that I see the world. I apply the design process to pretty much everything that I do. And what I try and impart on students is to say, there are only so many jobs that you can get as a traditional industrial designer who's going to go out there and design a manufactured product. Don't box yourself into that. You've been given this degree, and use it in a very broad sense, where you think of yourself going to work in a bank and applying that design thinking process to how you're going to completely redesign the service offering within a bank. You may end up working in a coffee shop and bring that design lens to how you're going to redesign that coffee shop business. Walk into that business as a design graduate and say, actually, you've got this whole business back to front. Your cash register's in the wrong place. The interior design's completely wrong. All your furniture's, horrible. Your customers are queuing up outside, whereas they should be queuing inside, and all your signage should be pointed at them. All those things that designers just notice. So for me, it's this beautiful, incredibly valuable skill that you get as a designer. And what I try and tell students, you go out into the world and you may not get your ideal industrial design job designing beautiful fancy cars or fantastic consumer electronic products. That doesn't matter. You've been given the skill, and if you think broadly enough, you're going to get a job in a service industry, designing businesses, designing strategy, designing services, designing experience. And I've that's the way I've sort of seen it in my own career. I've just every single thing I do, I look at through that design lens, and I've redesigned our awards program. I've redesigned the business model, and I continually do that. And it's now opened up a whole world of other opportunities for me, where I'm sitting on different boards, and I bring that exact same mindset to that to those sorts of problems as well. So I think it's one of the most valuable skill sets that anyone can have in the 21st century. I mean, I really do genuinely believe that, and particularly if you see, the way that the world is going, and our next generation, or our younger generation, going into the world where half the jobs haven't even yet been created. Having that creative design mindset is going to be absolutely essential. So that's kind of how I've navigated through, and I wouldn't change it for $1 billion. There's no way in the world I'd want to do anything else in the world.
Yeah, good stuff. Paul, did you have any questions at all or on that?
Well, on the sort of the you're filling both camps with academia and industry, Brandon. How are you finding the university syllabus and the sort of the agile ability for modules to be sort of tweaked to actually come in line with what industry needs as industry develops at such a fast pace? Do you find that that there's the ability to move and be agile enough so that when graduates leave university, they're pretty much or very close to what's happening in industry that year at that time? I know it's a ever-changing shape, but how do you feel about the sort of university syllabuses? And you almost were in a very good position to sort of steer and direct those.
Yeah, it's a tough one, I think if I had to be honest and brutally honest, I think university design education's got a long way to go. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but it's like steering a really, really big ship. They're still teaching traditional industrial design, and with the mindset that these graduates are going to go into an industry and go work as industrial designers designing products that come off a manufacturing line. Yeah. And that's great. That's we need that. But we also need design thinkers that think broadly. And what I'm seeing time and time again is that there's a limited amount of jobs for designers that are in that traditional design space, but there's a ton of demand for designers that think strategically, that sort of zoom out a bit and go, right, how can I go into a service design job, or how can I go and apply my skills at a strategic level to redesign business models. That to me is where the opportunities are really going to come from. And I just don't think that the universities are there yet. They're still sort of lagging behind in terms of catching up. Another big area that we haven't really even spoken about is social innovation. So the sort of social impact side of design and NGOs looking at applying design and design thinking in that space is, again, that's booming, but there's not enough graduates that are actually being taught about how to leverage their design thinking skills and apply it to that space. So, and that said, I think that a lot of universities are now actually looking at what they're seeing, what's happening. They know that they need to change. They know that they need to refine their curriculum. And I think that's a good thing. It's just going to take some time to kind of catch up.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's unique. You know, both Brad and I, when I was in the UK, and Brad's been doing it more recently, been involved in BIDA, British Industrial Design Association. And I think there was always that sort of almost creative friction between what industry needed and what the UK universities were able to do. And your analogy of a battleship moving slowly, I think is absolutely spot on. And Brad, is that your sort of recent experience? Because you've been doing this very recently, within the last year.
Oh, I've been going up and down. One day I'm in Bangor, next day I'm in Brighton. You know, thanks to things like Zoom. I mean, I'd never be able to get the expenses through. You know, I'm going up and down all the time. So I think I'm talking to Edinburgh Napier this evening, and I think my kind of view on it is a bit controversial, but sometimes I think that there's too many students that kind of go through a system, and I kind of look at it and wonder how on earth they're going to get a job at the end of it. But I think that's maybe a chat for another day. I think, as they just like talk about awards, universities are also businesses as much as anything else, and maybe that's it. You know, could be a good thing or a bad thing. But sometimes I just think too many go through the system and they're not necessarily prepared to, you know. And that's why I'm hoping that bringing people on that aren't necessarily doing the traditional industrial design job is they can kind of listen to this and go, actually, you know what, maybe I can take this kind of skill set that I'm learning here, and maybe I might not get that design job at, you know, insert a prestigious name here, but I can take that elsewhere. And I think that sometimes is probably one of the big faults of design education, is that it always seems to be that if you don't get that job in that prestigious place, then you've kind of failed, really. But I think there's a lot more avenues where you can kind of take that degree. We was talking to someone the other day that worked for a software company, that not software company, like a reselling company, and they had one of their sales staff was a designer, you know, and it takes that kind of core skill and sales design, or so it's just those different kind of areas you can take that degree in. I don't know if I've actually answered your question there, Paul, but
Brad, if I can jump in, I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, again, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but the university sector here in Australia has taken a big hit because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it's only going to get tougher. They need to tighten up their business models as well. And what I'm seeing, what I've been arguing for, is that, you know, industrial design should almost be on par with architecture. And here in Australia, it's a 5-year degree, sort of 3 years plus 2 years. And a lot of the design courses here are actually going backwards to 3. Like, no, you just can't squash in a proper design degree with all those skills into a 3-year degree. And then I guess coming back to what you were saying as well, like for me, the prime objective of going through and getting a university degree is that you end up getting a job. Point. So you know, if you've got this nice little shiny piece of paper and you're not actually employable, what's the use? You end up with a massive student debt. and you've got something that's completely worthless. So, coming back to what I was saying around expanding that view of design, a lot of the consulting firms here, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, even the Australian Tax Office, is employing designers, but not designing toothbrushes and kettles and fridges. They're actually designing systems and processes and services and experiences. That to me is where our university sector should really catch up, and how do they modify what they are teaching to make sure that they are graduating students with those skills that can go out and be employed, because there's that demand is only going to go up. I keep on arguing. I don't know what it is in the UK, but our service sector here in Australia is something like 75% of our GDP is our service sector. And if you think of what impact designers can have within the service space, that's where the demand's going to come from. So we should all be focusing on how do we meet that demand that's going to come in the next 5-10 years for designers. And if there's a shortfall, that to me, rests on the shoulders of our design education system.
Yeah. I read a little earlier, just doing a bit of research, that Australian design contributes to something like $67 billion to the Australian economy. It's amazing. And as you've said, that can be in all areas of Australian design. Where is that fitting? But contributes $67 billion to the Australian economy. Thank you very much. That's good.
So that's a study that was conducted by IP Australia quite recently, and what an amazing figure, right? So straight away, we now have a value of the design sector in Australia. It's $67.5 billion. So it's bigger than the construction sector. Isn't that fantastic? So I'm sort of like, when I saw that, I went, hallelujah, we finally have this figure that we can point to. And for me, how do we amplify that? How do we quadruple that figure? And how do we really grow our sector here and turn it into $100 billion sector?
I heard something the other day. I don't know, you may have more information than Brandon. That's that the government have got this incentive for encouraging investment for innovation, the patent box. And I think it's maybe geared towards the biotech and medical tech innovation. But there's putting something like just over $200 million worth of investment into this to encourage startups and design, and have this sort of patent box so you could almost ring fence the patent so it didn't go out of Australia, and that technology stayed in Australia. I don't know if you heard, it was just a snippet I heard on ScoMo was saying something on the TV the other day.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And I think it's more, my understanding of it, Paul, is that if you register a patent under this patent, what they call a patent box, I think they've actually taken the lead from some other countries around the world. You basically, it's some sort of a tax credit. So a lot of your income that you would derive from that piece of R&D that you've then gone and patented will be treated differently in terms of how it's taxed. So it's a real incentive for small businesses and startups with an idea, with a piece of technology, to go and wrap a patent around it, and then extract the taxation benefits from that. So again, I think there's a hell of a lot happening at the moment. One of the things that the government announced during COVID was a modern manufacturing fund. This is a $1.3 billion fund to look at 6 priority areas across Australian manufacturing, and saying, how do we actually turn companies in those sectors that have what they call a comparative advantage and turn them into a competitive advantage. So if you look at space sector, medical and scientific equipment, clean energy, food and agri, these are all these. So what they've done is identify 6 sectors across the Australian industry and said, how do we actually amplify and really make these sectors incredibly competitive? We know we're good at things in that space. How do we become great? And that's where we've been trying to sort of get in there and talk about design being an absolutely critical part. If we are talking about businesses becoming internationally competitive in those sectors, design's got to be front and center. So hopefully government starts to take note that design is beyond just this designing a nice shiny object. It's actually a real strategic tool to help these businesses, grow.
And when you give that figure of 60-something billion, you've now got a tangible value of, look, whereas before it's quite subjective, isn't it, as an industry? But now you can say, well, look at the ROI you're going to get, if you.
Oh, it's an industry, and I don't know how many times I've pretty much met with most of our successive prime ministers here, and we talk about the design industry and like, are you really an industry? Well, now we are, because we can point to that, and we're, it's as I said, it's bigger than the construction sector, on par with it. So that's just fantastic to be able to point to that, and I think it'll take us a long way in terms of the government taking design seriously, that it is actually a sector. And it contributes to our GDP.
Yeah. And do you think, Brandon, it's kind of like a perfect storm that the COVID situation the world has found itself in over the last year and a half, and all of a sudden the focus of how much we rely on overseas manufacturing, and there seems to be an awful lot of talk now of trying to reshore and bring that manufacturing back to Australia. And I'm dealing with half a dozen clients that are very passionate about designing Australian materials and manufacturing here in Australia. And I don't know, I think it's just, for some companies, it's just woken them up that their supply chain and having to rely on overseas they're never gonna get rid of it. It's gonna have to be maybe just balancing it a little bit more, that more is relied on here in Australia. So I don't know whether that sort of reshoring focus and, as we were saying, the design contributing to the economy is just going to give that a little bit more emphasis and a little bit more momentum to get things changed.
Yeah, look, I probably wouldn't describe it as a perfect storm. There's nothing perfect about a pandemic, but it certainly, as you said, I think it got a lot of Australian businesses, and I think generally the Australian public it sort of gave us a bit of a wake-up call, going, if the whole world did sort of close in on itself and every country had to sort of be dependent, we're very vulnerable. We're quite exposed. As you mentioned, almost overnight, we thought, wow, we're so reliant on all these international supply chains that if everything had to kind of close off completely, we wouldn't be able to design our own personal protection equipment and all those basic fundamental things that sort of keep us as a country. So I think it's been a good wake up call. I think there's been a lot of companies, a lot of manufacturing companies that have sort of taken that as an opportunity to go, how do we evolve our business towards being more competitive in manufacturing. I think that the government has certainly woken up, going, wow, we used to have a thriving manufacturing sector here. Over the years, it's sort of slowly declined. But I think now it's kind of seeing so much activity around manufacturing. There's a lot of desire for Australian made within consumers. You've probably seen this. We had an Australian made week a couple of weeks ago. It was, and if you had that conversation 10 years ago, it was like, oh yeah, Australian made. It didn't really have a lot of the momentum that it has now. So I think hopefully it's a good thing. We can leverage our way out of this and say, what do we need to do to come out of the other end with better manufacturers, better design-led manufacturers as well. A lot of the manufacturers have, I guess, understood that design is going to be this critical thing that's going to allow them to be smarter at what they do. I don't think that it's a conversation we've had many times over, is that Australia's got to be very clear about what it can manufacture and where we are competitive. We're not going to be, we're not going to compete with China if we're talking of, producing a widget where we're the volumes of 100 million units of something. But we're really, really good at high-end manufacture, smart manufacturing, incorporating robotics, all of those things that are, a high-end value product with a high technology component. And if you look at companies like Cochlear, who develop, hearing aids, world-class, ResMed, these are companies that, manufacture their products here, but it's low volume, high technology content, and that's where I think Australia is going to have a competitive advantage.
Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant. Well, but just so you know, before the end of every episode, we like to ask the same question. But I think two of the last four have ducked the question. So I'll ask it to you. But if you don't have an answer, it's absolutely fine. It's and I might even ask that.
Right now.
Yeah, that's fine. And I'll even ask it to you as well, Paul. But the question
No
is,
pressure.
what is the strangest brief you've ever seen? Now, you probably see quite a few. You don't have to mention specific companies or specific people, but I didn't know if there's any particular maybe award submissions in the past you've looked at and gone, this is just strange. Or is there a boatload?
I'm gonna answer this question. Bugger it. So we've always, at the end of each judging process, we're talking 3-4 days into the judging, the judges all get to know each other, and we always end up having this strange conversation of, what happens if we have a gun being entered into the awards, right? And we need to judge this thing as an object of design, and look at it purely as a piece of design, not really in the context of, well, it actually shoots someone, right? And we always get into this really interesting conversation of like, how strange would that be if you ended up giving an award to a shiny gun, and what message would that send? Believe it or not, and I'm not going to mention any company names. One year we had a submission from a manufacturer of, let's say, a high-end piece of military equipment that could pretty much tear down a forest.
Right.
Wow.
So it wasn't just a gun. It was like we're talking a serious piece of military equipment, and we had a pretty good chat within the jury of saying we just respectfully decline to assess this, and it's not the sort of project that we want to promote within our own awards program. It could be an incredible piece of technology. It could be a game changer for what it is, but it's not the sort of thing that we want to promote within our own awards program. And I'll add to that, because on the other end of it, we've also had gambling equipment that has been entered, and some really, really amazing stuff if you look at it as a piece of design. But we also then take a step back and go, right, as a body that's really beyond just promoting great design, what are we saying about the design industry? And we just went back and said respectfully, it's not the sort of project that we would want to have entered into our awards program. So not necessarily a brief, but projects that I think I'm quite proud that we do have a process where we do push back and say thanks, but no thanks.
We don't really want. Is it pokies? That you?
That's pokies.
We don't really want the pokies machine on the front cover of the Sydney Herald.
And that's a tough thing for all the designers out there. They're probably shaking their heads. If you have a client that comes to you with an interesting project like that, how do you say no? And I think you just have to make your own call on that. But hopefully that's answered your question.
Yeah, no, you've done a good job, Paul. You must have seen some stuff in the past. Is there anything that?
No, I'm gonna pass on it. I can't think of anything at the moment, but I will for the next time. Yeah. I'll do my research.
No worries. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and the door is always open if you ever want to come back, and hopefully to the designers from Australia that listen to it, they can finally listen to a voice that they recognise and an accent that they recognise, and